The Book Cook by V.C. Swanson, illustrated by Clint Hansen. On Christmas Eve evening, a blizzard was blowing. Somewhere amidst all the swirling and snowing, sister and brother, two talented twins, cooked up a good story, and here it begins. Maria and Matty, 11 years old, were warm-hearted children despite the deep cold. They'd set out at dusk in their snow boots and mittens to wander the streets like a pair of lost kittens. In general, these children did everything right, from manners to chores to their homework each night, but somehow this year neither sister nor brother remembered to shop for a gift for their mother. This gifting omission so greatly upset them, their father had given permission to let them go out in the snow for some last-minute shopping, with no time to spare and with no time for stopping. They hiked from the east to the west side of town in search of a shop that had not yet shut down. Their hopes started fading, their spirits were spent. Then over the air came a savory scent. The wonderful smell didn't come from a store. It came from an alley they'd not seen before. A sign at the entrance was hanging on hooks. Upon it was painted, "Two children with books." That sign looked so lifelike, Maria was thinking. In fact, she was sure that the picture was winking. She stopped in her tracks and said matter-of-factly, "The girl in this painting looks like me exactly." Then Matty came over and looked at the sign and said, "That's your portrait, and next to it's mine." Astonished, they stared at their painted reflections, and then underneath them they noticed directions. "Good evening, dear friends," said the small golden writing. "The book cook is near and is kindly inviting the kids who appear in the sign's illustration to come learn the magic of story creation." They looked down the alley and saw a strange door in front of a windowless yellow brick store. They walked over to it and paused for a minute, imagining what in the world they'd find in it. They summoned up all of the courage they'd brought and stepped on a doormat that said "Food for Thought." They knocked on the door until, creak, their hearts leapt. The door opened inward. Inside they crept. From outside it looked like the store was a small room, but inside it felt like a palace's ballroom. The ceiling was high, maybe 30 feet tall, with candlelit chandeliers lighting the hall. And rows upon rows of immense wooden shelves encircled the room and surrounded themselves. Each shelf had been cluttered with boxes and bins, with green and blue bottles and rust-colored tins. And in the room's center, a black battered kettle, as big as a car made of hand-hammered metal, was brimming with some kind of hot liquid brewing, and it smelled delicious, whatever it was stewing. Well, naturally, children would form a suspicion that this was the shop of a witch or magician, but nothing about it seemed cold or unpleasant, and they were still focused on finding a present. When suddenly footsteps approached on the floor, a gust of wind blew and it slammed shut the door. The twins whirled around toward the sound in affright, and the scene that they saw was a curious sight. A crooked old woman with kindly brown eyes. She wasn't much bigger than half of their size. She had on thick glasses with frames of bright red, and floppy toque blanc sat on top of her head. She wore an old apron that might have been pink, except it was splattered with splotches of ink. She had on a couple of cardigan sweaters. The top one said "Chef" on the front in gold letters. Her hands were quite wrinkled, her hair had been wild, but there was a warmth that shone through when she smiled. The children were cautious since she was a stranger, but soon they determined that there was no danger. "Oh, welcome, dear children," she said, "to my store. It's not like the shops that you've been in before. Just call me the book cook. So glad you made it, for here in the kitchen good books are created. You'll find on my shelves we have all that we need to mix into something delicious to read. A last-minute present? Well, you can stop looking. Let's whip up a story. Come on, let's get cooking." Then, quick as a wink, she went up on a ladder to search a top shelf, and she made quite a clatter. She pulled out a bottle and quickly unstopped it and held it out over the kettle and dropped it. "It's simple," she said, "and it's truly exciting to learn what ingredients make up good writing. These shelves contain characters, subjects, and verbs. Just sprinkle them in like they're spices and herbs." By now, both the twins had been fairly persuaded that this was a wonderful task that awaited. They started exploring each bottle and bin and shared their ideas how their book would begin. They searched through containers of heroes and villains, of animal sidekicks and ad-libbing fill-ins. They found a wide box labeled "Stories with Whales" right next to a vial of fairies with tails. And thousands of adjectives lay out in stacks near baskets of fables and buckets of facts. They dodged a big shelf of close calls and near misses and laughed at a can labeled "Romance and Kisses." They ran through the shelves and they thought it amazing to see all the storylines, topics, and phrasing. They had some ideas what their mom might prefer, so they chose a few words and then started to stir. As they did their cooking, the book cook was telling the reason she found her creations compelling. Oh, books are old-fashioned, but trust me, we need 'em. To keep your brains growing, it's books you must feed 'em. Your screens and machines can be fun and fantastic. Minds can't survive on just metal and plastic. A well-balanced diet of pages and ink will strengthen your spirit and teach you to think. And so they worked on, and it all seemed auspicious. Their story progressed, and it smelled quite delicious. The twins were both pleased with the words they selected, but just when they thought that their tale was perfected, poor Matty tripped over his big snow boot laces and knocked down a ladder, which broke in two places, and shelves tumbled over, and bottles were breaking right into the cauldron and book they were making. The words scattered everywhere, mixed up and jumbled, around in the swirling concoction they tumbled. They ran to the cauldron and looked inside, fearing the very strange story that started appearing. With pony-tailed dinosaurs playing the drums, and astronaut frogs baking pies out of plums, while little red riding rats rode by on bicycles, polka-dot snakes got their tongues stuck on icicles. Blindfolded giants were juggling tires, with samurai schoolchildren singing in choirs, and scarecrows and porcupines danced a ballet, while hippos and flip-flops were playing croquet. Some medieval knights started fights in tornadoes, while Farmer Snow White chased her 7 potatoes, and leprechaun penguins were painting in caves as Vikings in bathing suits surfed in the waves. We ruined it, the heartbroken twins began wailing. Remember, these children were not used to failing. They did their work carefully, neat and meticulous, but one mistake and it all seemed ridiculous. Tears started coming, their eyes became blurry. The book cook came over and said, "Don't you worry. Well, sure, it'd be nice if our stories were faultless, but food is no fun when it's sweetless and saltless. You both should be proud of your jumbled up stew. You've made something here that's creative and new. Oh, writing is never a perfect endeavor, but when it's a gift, people love it forever." They dried off their tears and then went to the kettle and tipped out its contents and let it all settle. The words spread in rows across sheet after sheet in an ink-scrambled story, both wild and sweet. The book cook then took up their pages and ink, and she rapped on a cover and gave them a wink. "I think you've created a book to remember, and this one's on me. Come back next December." They gave her a hug, and with no time to dally, they dashed out the door and ran back up the alley. They passed by their portraits, which waved their goodbyes, and ran through the snow under now starry skies. They made it home late and crept in with their key, and tucked their mom's present right under the tree. They kissed both their parents and crawled in their beds and fell right asleep when they lay down their heads. Well, morning arrived, and to their great surprise, their mom found her gift and had tears in her eyes. But they were good tears. She was truly elated. She loved every page of the book they created. And so this tale ends with them hugging their mother. When stories end, you can go make another. If ever you're hungry for magic and laughter, or cook up a book and read happily ever after.